All right, I'm here to talk to you about the imperative for transformation in B2B sales right now. I've got a very short number of slides that we're going to talk through. You are welcome to ask questions. I've been asked if I would take questions as they show up, and I will. If there's anything that I can answer for you or help you with, I'm happy to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump in and start making this case for transformation. So here we go. All right. There's a few things that we need to talk about here very at the beginning of this short, it'll be a very short slide deck, but it will be profound. The legacy approaches are the approaches that we used in the past, and they no longer create the value that clients need. And because they don't create value, what happens is that people are walking into a first meeting and they're doing things that they've done for a very long time. And all of us were trained on this. You were trained in the 70s, you were trained in the 80s and the 90s, and all of those things worked perfectly at that time, but they no longer work as well as they did then because buyers have changed. They want something different than what they've been getting. And I will give you some evidence on that as we go through this. If you are in B2B sales and you're using a legacy approach, I can tell you there's a few things that will happen and why you will need to evolve. Number one, I have 5 companies that I've worked with that they measure their revenue at about 15 billion and up, somewhere around there. What they've told me, all of them, was we can get a first meeting with anybody we want. Everybody knows who we are. We have a great reputation. They'll take our call. They'll have a meeting with us, and then they can't get a second meeting. Now, if you can't get a second meeting, that means that you do not have an opportunity, and you don't have that opportunity because you did not pass your audition. So if you have a team and they're going out and getting the first meeting, and then you're letting them put this in a CRM, you do not have an opportunity. Until there's a second meeting, you do not have an opportunity. You can remove all of those from your CRM today and don't worry about it because you're not going to lose anything. You might lose the coverage of pipeline, but that's not how you get your goals anyway. You get your goal by winning enough deals in your pipeline. You will need to evolve. So we have to evolve from the legacy approach to something that I call the modern sales approach or a modern methodology. And I'll give you a little bit about this right now because I have some rules for salespeople. Rule number 1, you're not allowed to mention the name of your company in the first meeting. They already took your call. They already put you on the calendar. You don't need to tell them where you're from. You already did that. The second thing, you're not allowed to talk about any of your clients or any of your results or anything else about a client that you work with, because that's not interesting to the other person. They're hopefully thinking that you want to learn something about them instead of telling them about the other companies that you work with. The next thing, you're not allowed to talk about your solution. You're not allowed to ask for rapport and have a conversation that they didn't sign up for. And these things have to be moved. So if you want to transform, the first thing that you have to do is get rid of the things that people don't want anymore. They don't want to see the picture of your building. They don't want to hear about your logos, that your trophy case that you put up on a slide with only the biggest and largest clients. They're not interested in any of that. What I've noticed is some books that I've written are being bought in very large numbers. One's called Eat Their Lunch. That's being bought 500, 600 at a time because people are recognizing that today's market is not the market that we had in the last, let's say, 5 or 6 years. The reason that they're changing the way that they sell is because the way that they're selling isn't effective enough. And I'll give you a whole bunch of a case on this as we go through this. The oldest structure that we have with a sales approach is about 60 years old. And I would tell you 60 years ago, that was the end of the 1960s. Have you noticed that anything changed in that period of time? So at that time, when that was created, it was perfect for that time. It was exactly what people needed. There was no internet. If you wanted to learn something about a company or you wanted to learn about their solutions, you'd need them to come in and sit down with you and tell you all about their company and their clients and their solutions and their results. And that would have been exactly the right thing to do. But we don't live in a time where there is no internet. So we have the internet now. And any one of your buyers, if they take a call from you and they say yes to a meeting, you can be certain they're going to, if they haven't already, they have gone out and looked at your website. They've looked at your testimonials. They've looked at your products and services. They've already done that. So they don't have any need to have you recite that to them. It's not going to be helpful for them. And this is what causes people to start saying, like, we don't want to have to talk to salespeople anymore. It's no fun. They're not very interesting. They're not very interested in us. And now we'd rather just go without that. And if you look at Gartner's latest surveys, it's about 78% of tech buyers say that they would like to go without a salesperson at all. 68% of them, or some number like that, has already bought a complex solution without a salesperson at all. So this is where we are. They're more informed than they've ever been. There's so much information. In fact, we have too much information and too much competition, and it's confusing for people. And they're also more independent than they've ever been before. So they are thinking that I'm going to be leading this because it's my change initiative. And I would tell you that's not a good way for us to do this, but that is how they feel. And that is what you're running into, or your team is running into every day. So I'm going to give you a last thing on this thing. The legacy approaches are useful in the past, but right now they feel like transacting. So that's what it feels like to the client. The client thinks you came in here, you want to pitch me, and I've not gotten any real value creation from you. And that causes them to say, failed the audition. Now I'm going to go find another rep and hope that I can get somebody who's more interested in me and who is more interesting to me. No questions so far. If you have them, you can interrupt me. Why transform? If you go from a legacy approach and you start to pursue what we would call a modern sales approach, what you're doing is you're taking all the things that we used to do and get rid of those, and you're using strategies that allow you to create value for the client. Now, I have to tell you what that means. I know people know those words, but I don't believe they know what it means. So let me tell you what this means. When we say something like create value for the client, we're not adding value. Adding value is what you do when you're in a negotiation. Creating value means that I'm educating the client on the decision that they're making. And I want to make a point about this because it's really important. So far, sales leaders still think that the solution is the thing that's going to cause somebody to buy, but it's not. It's the decision making. So creating value means I'm going to facilitate the client's buyer's journey. Why? Because I do it every day. I take people through this journey. I make sure that they get the result at the other end. And the buyer who is making a decision, a rare decision that they have to get right, is worried about that decision. They don't want their reputation to be damaged. They want to make sure that they get it right on the very first attempt. So they're hoping that somebody's going to give them the information that would allow them to make the decision, and that decision would be a rare decision that they got right on the first try. That is what they're looking for from us. If you sell like I do, I still sell. I still have a number of businesses. And what I can tell you is that I notice more than ever that my clients, the people that I talk to, lack the confidence and lack the certainty to make a decision. So I'm going to say this. It's hard. This is a hard thing for me to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. I would want you to transfer all of your knowledge and your experience, or your teams, to help them make the decision that you would make for them if the client asked you to make the decision. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to take all of your experience and your knowledge, using it as insights and teaching the client what they need to know to be able to make the very best decision for their business, even if it's not us. Even if it's not us, let's make sure they get the right decision, because that'll come around later on in life. So, Jim, you popped up, so you have a question.
Yes, as facilitators of the buyer's journey, as you're saying, then our role is no longer about persuading, but rather it's guiding people through a good decision process. I like
That is one of the more important things of a modern sales approach. Thanks for sharing that. Decision makers, decision shapers are making sense out of the challenges in improving their results by this idea of we're taking them through the buyer's journey. And remember, like a lot of times, the person that you're walking through that journey, the last time they've made a decision like this might have been 5 years ago or 7 years ago. They don't know all the things that have happened in your industry and what's going on in the environment. So we have to do this work for them now. And this is what they're expecting. They're expecting this approach. I had a very large client ask me to come out and speak to them about their business. I had 6 senior leaders that sat with me for 2 hours and 30 minutes. And at the end of the 2 hours and 30 minutes, I don't know how much that cost them. I mean, they have their senior leaders there. It's a lot of money they're spending on a meeting with a salesperson. At the end of that meeting, they said, could you come back 2 weeks? 2 weeks later, I did another 2 hours and 30 minutes with them. And at the end of that, they said, we interviewed everybody in the city and we're choosing you because this is what we were looking for. They were looking for somebody that was insightful, somebody that already did the homework on their business and had something to say and a perspective about it. This is where we are. So if this is not what your team looks like, I would tell you, you're probably falling behind if you aren't already, and it will probably be better for you to start working towards this idea of a transformation. The first thing that I would suggest is as an area for change is your sales methodologies. So a lot of methodologies worked for a very long time. I practiced many of them. I think probably a lot of people here have practiced many of them. I practiced spin selling, not the best book by Rackham, a great book, but the second one, Major Sales Strategies, was a much better book. What you have to figure out though is why what worked for you in the past no longer works for you in today's market. And the reason is that buyers have changed. We live in a time of uncertainty and what I would call the AC/DC environment, not the rock band, even though that's a great rock band. I'm talking about accelerating, disruptive change. That's what we're in. That's right where we're in. We're going to be here for, I'm going to say, into the late 30s. We'll probably be in this area right now. It doesn't work because the environment changed, buyers' expectations change. So many things change, we can't count all of them. But what you need to change is the methodology so you can create value in the sales conversation. And I want to make a point about this for people who don't understand this or haven't heard these words before. The only variable to you winning or losing is the sales conversation. That's all we have. When we come in, it's us. I mean, most of the time it's one salesperson by themselves sitting across from a person or a number of people, and all they have is a conversation. That's all they have. If you ever won a deal, it's because you had a sales conversation. If you ever lost a deal, it's because you had a sales conversation. That's the variable. Did you have a good conversation that was helpful for other people, that they felt was value creating? Or did you have let's say a self-oriented, let me tell you about our company, let me make sure I get to pitch you this solution before we leave? Those are the kinds of things that people are just going, not for us. It's not for us. There's a whole bunch of us that do this work. There's all kinds of competitors. and they're all out doing the same work that we're doing, and it's a contest. So it's a contest where whoever has the best ability to create value in the sales conversation is the one that's most likely to win. You do have to do something called via negativa. And that means you have to get rid of the things that aren't working. So you have to start getting rid of all the things that don't work anymore and start removing the outdated strategies and move to the more modern methodologies. And Jim is back.
Yep, Jim is back. I get the impression that transformation, the way you're approaching it, shouldn't be seen as an event. It should be seen as kind of transitioning to a position of perpetual evolution.
Right, that's exactly what it is. It is the evolving B2B landscape that causes us to have to make these changes. And I think, Jim, you're exactly right. This is one stop. I mean, the environment's going to continue to change. I'm going to tell you, if you haven't heard me say this before, we have 78.8 million baby boomers. They will all be out of the workforce, minus 1 million of them in 2030. They will all be out of work. So the last 2 years found 10,000 baby boomers retiring or turning 65 every single day. Those were the biggest cohorts that went through that period. We have a rate of children being born at 1.66, and that means we are 25% below the 2.21 babies that you need for every woman if you want the population to stay exactly where it is. So that's where we are right now. And I'm telling you this because the demographics that we have right now, it's not just the United States, we're in better shape than everybody else, but that's not a great spot to be in. But if you had this would be the best place for you to do this. There will be a drop in demand in all kinds of industries as the baby boomers. It's the largest generation we've ever had. There's no generation that's even close to them. So you can expect the future to have fewer competitors, and you're going to have much better salespeople, because the ones that are going to make it through this over the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years, the people that are still going to be here are going to be experts. They're going to be authorities. They're going to be well read. They're going to know all about the industry that they're talking to. And it's going to be a very different world than we're in for some period of time, probably into the 40s. That's what the guess is based on just the demographics and where we are right now. So this is going to change, and you will change with it, or it will leave you behind, because that's how evolution tends to work. Modern methodologies. I'm going to just say a few things about this. We're at the halfway point, so we're getting there. Shifting away from solution sales to an insight-based approach. So for a long time, everything was about the solution, and people have been taught and trained and onboarded that the solution is the best solution there is. There is no competition. You should win every single pursuit because our solution is the very best. And now people are starting to realize everybody's got a good solution. Everybody works for a good company. Everybody's got good clients. All of these things are parity. So you have to get away from parity. How do you get away from parity? You have a better sales conversation than your competitors. If you can do that, you're in the driver's seat. If you can't, then it's going to be difficult, and it'll continue to get difficult. I like to see Jim come back. I never get enough time talking to you.
Well, that lets you know you're getting through. And we've got some questions, and I'll give you two of them together so that you choose the order and how you answer. One is MEDDIC, spin, gap selling, challenger sales, all dead now, was the question mark. The second one was, for a moving and transportation relocation industry company, which sales methodology would fit for them? So the first one is, are these other models all dead now? The second is, in the relocation industry, which sales methodology seems best?
I'm going to give you my personal approach to this. I love Neil Rackham. He's one of my absolute favorites. I would probably wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for Neil Rackham. Uh, I do think Challenger is more like to what I'm saying right now than to the other ones. I think Medic is self-oriented. It's about me talking to you about, are you going to do this for me? Are you going to do this for me? Are you going to do this for me? And the client's really expecting us to do something for them instead. So I think anything like a BANT or anything that's just pure qualifying, you don't need to do that anymore. You can start qualifying it after you've had some conversation with people, because I think you lose them very fast with those structures. There are other people who have insight-based approaches. I'm not the only one. I'm probably the one that has a lot of attention around it because I publish every single day. But I think that I would get rid of the medic, and I love Jim Keenan. He's a good friend of mine. I think if he was here, he would be the closest to me, even though I have a different structure than he does. But I also think he's also very, very effective in the sales conversation. And I think that's why he's been successful. And don't tell him that I said anything nice about him, unless you know him, Jim, and then you can. Yeah. When you start a conversation in a modern methodology, you start with why us, or why change, not why us. The old way is why us. We start by talking about us. Now we just start with why change. My structure that I use to do this, I started using it in 2001. It's a long time ago, but I had a client and they were very difficult, and I decided that I was going to prosecute their beliefs, and I put a very large slide deck together, about 100 slides, all repetitive. They all said the same thing over and over again. And I bludgeoned them into understanding that they were not, their beliefs were not true. After that, I wish I would have made a bigger choice sooner than that. But I realized when I walked in and I did executive briefing for 4 groups of people, and they all wanted a copy of it, first time anybody ever asked me for a slide deck, I realized that there was some value there, that they were learning something that was important to them for their decision making and for their business. And then I thought, well, let's give it a try and see if we can just do it cold. Just walk in and open up the executive briefing and start teaching them what we think they need to know to make the right decision. And I've never swayed from that. I still do it that way. I don't take a call with anybody unless we do an executive briefing, because I want them to have the context that they need so that they can make the decision that we're going to work with them on. It is important for you in a modern methodology, in a transformation, is to be consultative. And I'm going to describe what consultative means to me, because when I ask salespeople, what does consultative mean? We don't use any pressure, and we ask really good questions. Okay, fine, but that's not consultative. Consultative means I'm going to counsel you. I'm going to give you information. I'm going to take care of the gaps in your knowledge and your experience, because I have that. And if I give it to you, you're going to be able to make a better decision because you now have information that you didn't have. That's something called information disparity. I have information disparity. You're missing that information. If I give it to you, you're not missing it anymore. That is the way that we do this. But I can tell when somebody is consultative when I watch them, and I'll tell you how I look for this. Do they tell the client what the client needs to do? Do they give them advice and say, my advice is that you should do this, and I'm going to give them recommendations? So I would recommend, the buyer's journey is a good place to make recommendations. How to look at different factors and weight them. That's a great place for you to help them understand why they don't want to go the lowest price provider in that industry. All of these things are something that would say this person is probably consultative. But if all they do is talk about their solution, they're the opposite of that. They're creating anti-value. They're wasting time. And if you waste a client's time, you won't get their time again later. So that's how that works. I'm going to talk about how you execute this. I've done a number of very, very large transformations, very large companies. The last one that I did, I had 1,200 sales reps and 200 managers. That's a very large team. And it took a long time to get everybody through the process. But that is one of the things that I would tell you is most important, is that you have to have the will to just keep going until you get through all the stuff that you have to do to get a transformation. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. The first thing that I would recommend, if you decide we're going to transform, and maybe you say, I'm going to transform with Anthony. Okay, great. Then I'm going to tell you, train your sales managers and help the sales managers train their own team. They're going to be responsible for the behavioral changes. You want to do this with Jim Keenan, then Jim Keenan will tell you about what he thinks about transformation, and he'll give you probably some similar ideas than the ideas I'm giving you right now. What's most important in a transformation? This is the most important thing. It has to happen. If it doesn't happen, you don't have a transformation. The first thing that I would tell you is that if you don't get the behavioral changes, you do not have a transformation. It doesn't matter how much training they have, doesn't matter how much time they spent with their sales manager. It doesn't matter none of those things are going to matter. The only thing that happens is that they change their behavior. They get rid of the way that they used to do something, and now they do it in a better, more effective way. Effectiveness is the most underrated strategy for sales leaders that I know of. I've said it for 4 years, 5 years. Number one for you as a sales leader, sales manager, the effectiveness of your team. I know you want coverage on your pipeline, that's fine. But if you need 4 or 8 times their quota, then you have a winning problem, not a pipeline problem. And that's what you need to focus on. The effectiveness in the sales conversation is the variable. And if you don't have a great conversation with the client that they feel like they got value from, you're going to be in trouble. And Jim is back.
Yes, Jim is back because like I said, this is going to be fun and it's going to be fascinating. We've got just a couple of minutes left, but I love that last one. The most important thing, if you don't get behavioral changes, you haven't achieved a transformation. A couple of comments from earlier I wanted to share. One of the folks said, as Bryn Tillman says, lead people to your solution. Don't lead with your solution.
Yeah.
Love
That's why
that.
I like her so much.
Yeah, there you go. And the great point you made was it's about the customers wanting to be educated to build their confidence to make the buying decision. But coming back to all of this, your focus on the sales conversation, the dialogue, that I think is really the key element to understanding this whole thing, because that's where it shows up. That's where the agreements occur. And if you're not skilled in that conversation, then you're just a data storage device looking for a place to dump.
That's true. That's what people are doing. That's what we're trying to save them from. We're trying to save them from losing. We don't want people to lose. We want them to win. I'm going to just give you a couple more notes real quick. It takes probably a year to get real transformation, and sometimes longer than that. You have to continuously adapt and adjust as you go through this process. The ultimate goal is creating greater value for the clients, prospects, and win deals away from your competition and lead growth in the modern sales environment, because that's where we're going to be for some period of time.